It's a natural progression for artificial intelligence.
America is the country that started the AI race. And as President of the United States, I'm here today to declare that America is going to win it.
That's President Trump last week outlining what he calls America's AI action plan, saying we can't let China or anyone else beat us.
Our children will not live on a planet controlled by the algorithms of the adversaries advancing values and interests contrary to our own. We don't want to have contrary interests.
There are three parts to the president's plan: accelerating innovation, building data centers and other American AI infrastructure, and leading international diplomacy and security, with part of that focus on regulations that aren't too strict, harming AI development, and making sure free speech is protected. The congressman who co-chaired a House AI task force last year supports all this.
It really shows some deep thinking on the topic of AI, the impacts it's going to have on our society, and the ways that AI should affect the governance of the country.
Congressman Jay Obernolte is a Republican in California representing the 23rd House District.
And I was also very gratified to see that the action plan reflects many of the same priorities and recommendations that we reached in the AI task force last year in the House that, as you mentioned, I was honored to be the chairman of.
Have you had much opportunity to talk to, say, David Sachs? He's the AI czar the Trump administration has in place.
Dave and I met in the Eisenhower building in D.C., and what we're trying to work together towards is making sure that we codify a regulatory framework for AI at the federal level. And we in Congress need to do our part and make sure that we pass legislation that codifies what needs to be codified at the federal level, but also makes it clear to the states what is interstate commerce and therefore preempted for regulation by Congress, and where the states can be the laboratories of democracy that they are and pass their own legislation on AI regulation.
What is most important when you consider regulating AI?
Well, I think it's important to strike a balance between, on the one hand, protecting Americans against the malicious use and the harmful effects potentially of AI. And I know that's something that people have a lot of fear about. But on the other hand, we need to make sure that we put a regulatory framework in place that allows the beneficial effects of AI to occur, the amazing gains in worker productivity that's going to bring, and the way it's going to democratize access to information and education. So we need to make sure that we don't put so much regulation in place that we deny AI the ability to bring those positive effects in our society. So it's going to be a balance between those two things.
Infrastructure is obviously very important, and we mentioned David Sachs. He's also the crypto czar, and it's interesting that both artificial intelligence development and data centers, and also cryptocurrency and mining, they take up a lot of energy.
We have a whole chapter in the AI task force report on the amount of energy that's going to be required to maintain U.S. dominance in AI development and deployment. And that's one of the things that I'm very happy about, that in the AI action plan, the administration is proposing a new categorical exclusion under NEPA for data center actions that don't have a significant effect on the environment. So things like not only center permitting, but new energy generation, transmission projects, which are going to be very important.
Do we have enough energy? I mean, we continue to explode in AI development over the last couple of years, and I would assume it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger. Do we have enough?
No, we absolutely do not even close. And it's not just for AI. You know, we're electrifying a lot of different portions of our economy. And if you look at what's constraining our ability to lead the world, not just in topics like technology and AI, but in things like manufacturing, it's the cost of energy. I mean, it's here in California, we pay twice as much for residential electricity as neighboring states just because of the heavy hand of government. And, if you look at the barriers to locating more manufacturing here in the United States, the cost of energy is a big part of it. So we need to really get busy in bringing those costs down and doing more energy generation here in the United States.
You talk about worker productivity and AI helping companies be more efficient. On the downside, does that risk white-collar jobs? We all know Mike Rowe. He's very, involved in efforts to get the trades built up, and certainly we'll need that with more power and more data centers that are necessary. But he's talked about how for a long time automation was the fear, and it put blue collar jobs at risk. Now he's talking about white collar jobs.
Right. Well, AI is definitely going to be disruptive, but you have to take that in perspective. Every major technological advancement in the history of human civilization has been disruptive. Most recently, the internet, but going all the way back to the printing press. But in each case, the disruption has created far more jobs than it has displaced. And I mean, you look at the internet revolution, it's a great example of that. They do a survey of American high schoolers on what their number one career aspiration is. And last year, the answer was social media influencer. Think about how you would articulate to someone before the advent of the internet what a social media influencer was and why they'd make a lot of money and add societal value. I mean, you don't even have the vocabulary to express that. And that's
Correct.
just one
Yeah.
category of jobs that the internet created. So AI is going to be very similar that way. I mean, it is definitely going to displace some jobs, and we need to be prepared for that. We need to equip our young people with the tools and the education that they're going to need to empower themselves with AI to enhance their productivity as they start their careers. We're going to need to do some reskilling, and we need to beef up our social safety net to make sure people don't fall through the cracks.
All right. Another concern that people have had, especially on the right, is the use of AI to try to squelch free speech. Again, back to the AI czar David Sachs. He says that they must avoid Orwellian uses of AI. AI can be taught to say and believe things, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, you've seen some really egregious examples of that. But I think people ought to remember that when we talk about bias and AI, we're talking about, a fundamental aspect of AI. AI is all about bias. AI is about pattern recognition, right? It detects patterns in subtle ways that humans really can't. And it's biased by every single piece of data that you use to train it. So, I mean, you're building a bias in AI every time you feed it more information, you're biasing it one way or the other. So we just have to be cognizant of that when we deploy AI. And as David points out, we absolutely cannot allow AI to stifle free speech because that distracts away from who we are, our fundamental values as a society.
And there's another thing that you've seen certainly in the last couple of months, and you referenced it about people's fears. There have been models made on testing AI and what it would do if it was threatened to be taken out of service by a company that was employing it. And they went through all the different ones from Anthropic to OpenAI to Google, and it found that when pressed, it would resort to things like blackmail in order to stay around and avoid being replaced. Does that surprise you, concern you? What can be done about that?
Well, it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, obviously, if it's behaving this way, these algorithms, have found something in their training set to suggest that blackmail is something that's allowed and something that should be allowed to do, and to teach it that avoiding being shut down is something that it should be a goal, that it follows. So to me, it's all about training. I think it's a distraction though away from what the real fears about AI ought to be, because unfortunately, we here in the United States have had our views about the downsides of AI colored through the lens of 50 years of science fiction and pop culture. So if you ask an American, what's the worst that can happen with AI? You will get something out of a Terminator movie where an army of evil robots rises up to take over the world, right?
Or 2001, right? HAL and
There you
Space.
go. Yep,
Yeah.
HAL 9000. You got it, right? And this is the question you just asked is colored through that lens as well. But what we in the task force found when we surveyed the landscape of what lawyers call the parade of horribles, all the things that we're worried about. We don't worry about an army of evil robots. We're worried about the malicious use of AI by humans, right? The use of AI for cyber fraud and cyber theft, the use of AI by our geopolitical adversaries. To do things like disrupt our economy, but also disrupt our society, influence elections, things like that. We worry about the use of AI to develop biological and nuclear weapons, because we say bad people are going to bad. AI is an incredible tool for enhancing productivity, of humans, and bad people are going to bad more productively with AI than without it, and so we're worried about those. So those are the things that keep us up at night, not HAL 9000 refusing to shut itself down.
Okay. All right. But what about whenever we talk about things like that? China comes to mind, right? And some of the other countries that use Russia or North Korea that do fraud and hacking and phishing and all the things like that. How do we compete with China in AI and try to avoid that world?
Right. Well, that's a very important question because China, as you know, has made a firm commitment to be the worldwide leader in AI development and deployment by the year 2030. And they are investing vast amounts of resource into doing that. And people ought to be very concerned because if you look at some statistics like the number of PhDs that each country is graduating in the computer sciences, China passed the US by that statistic a couple of years ago, and it's likely this year they will graduate over double the number of PhDs in computer science than we will here in the United States. So we still have some structural advantages. Our export controls on chips have been very effective at maintaining US leadership because we're denying the Chinese, the tools, the technology that they need to compete with us, but they are catching up, and so we need to take it very seriously.
So ultimately, we should not, as a society, we should be trying to embrace AI and not focused on the everything that could go wrong with it. Is that what your ultimate goal?
No, I am an AI optimist. I mean, we can't lose sight of the optimistic case for AI. And I think we've done a terrible job at articulating that to the American public. So we need to say more often that, first of all, AI is already the most powerful tool that mankind has ever invented for the dissemination of human knowledge. It can teach anyone anything they want to learn about in whatever learning style is optimal for them. And the way that democratizes access to information is going to fundamentally change our society for the better. And then the other thing that we don't say often enough is that AI will shortly be the most powerful tool mankind has ever invented for the enhancement of human productivity. And that's going to have an incredible effect, not just on our economy, but our society.
Congressman Jay Obernolte, Republican in the 23rd District of California, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. I enjoyed it. Thank you.